Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture, and the rogues who create it every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast, soon to be Rogue Matter Podcasts. But we're going to make that transition in the next couple weeks. Download our podcast immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps or go to roguewavepodcast.com. That's Rogue Wave without an E to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Tonight, the Great Electro Debate. Jaime Foxx announces he's back in the Marvel Universe as Electro. The boys make our head explode, and we do the 2021 release date shuffle. I am your host, Michael Dolce, as always, joined by my cohort in crime, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up?
You're even more jubilant than normal. We're also going to welcome inker extraordinaire and Kickstarter, first-time Kickstarter, Andrew Pepoy. So you might recognize him from something like Fables or Valiant or Marvel or Simpsons. So he's going to join us as well a little bit later on in the show. Real quick before we get super going, the Time Trader is rolling along. The Kickstarter, we're like 68% funded. I mean, I couldn't even get that one extra percent to crack a good joke, but we're doing well. Go to sirestudios.inc.com/Kickstarter, and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter link, or just look up Time Trader on Kickstarter. What if you could rewind time? How would you cash in? If you get a do-over whenever you wanted to in life, which is what I kind of, thought of when I first came up with the concept for the series. Like, what if you could literally walk into someone's office, like you have a job interview and it doesn't go well? You just snap your fingers, rewind time, do it all over again. Or, as my brain always seems to gravitate toward, I was like, well, I could win the lottery, or I could bet on a Super Bowl and I could make a lot of money. Well, Dylan Sharp has the same ideas, only he's going to find out when you try things like that, you're going to be getting in big trouble. So Time Trader, it's live on Kickstarter. It's being published by Rogue Matter, our parent company, which we're like super excited about. So go check it out. Shall we jump into some Rogue Rage, Hassan?
I have no idea what we're talking about today. What are we?
All the rage in the pop culture world. We call this segment Rogue Rage. Do the 2021 release date shuffle. It is official. I think every tentpole movie now has been officially moved out of 2020 and will be in.
Like I told you, I did tell you that they were all gonna. We weren't gonna get anything this year.
Well, we did. No, we got Tenet. We got Tenet.
No, we didn't. We didn't really.
Yes.
Tenet was a litmus test, and it was a failure.
Correct.
So that basically means we're not going to get anything else.
No, exactly.
And I actually said this after Tenet. I said we're not going to get anything else. So I didn't say this including Tenet. I said this in response to Tenet.
And I said no, we'll get something.
You believed that at the end of the year, around November and December, we'd start getting movies again.
All right.
But you said that we would not get back to full capacity going to movies on a regular basis until mid to fourth quarter 2021.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, we basically, what's interesting though is that the response to the shuffle, and we'll run through the list real quick. No Time to Die is now April 2021. That was supposed to be November. Vin Diesel's Fast and Furious 9 is now May 2021. Dune is pushed back to October 2021, taking the date that The Batman occupied. That's been now pushed to 2022. Warner's now.
That sucks. That means they're going to make you wait a whole another year to see a Dune movie. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's actually terrible.
If you go to youtube.com/Rogue Matter, we actually pulled the Dune review, the trailer review, out as its own video. That has the most views out of everything on the on this channel now. So I guess people really are, clamoring for Dune.
As I said, even though you said it wouldn't go anywhere.
Oh, I didn't say it won't go anywhere. I'm merely saying that the trailer looked generic. It looked like generic action movie, and I know it's supposed to be a deeper book. I don't have any dog in the fight for Dune. I have no dog in the fight.
But you did say that you didn't think anybody was going to be interested.
Yes.
So
which
clearly,
is on that is on track with my previous. Like, if you want something to be successful, I need to genuinely believe this. If I genuinely believe this, you got a shot to make a huge.
I know, but I'm
upload.
just saying it's inconsistent with the results that you're getting from the video in and of itself.
No, it's very consistent. That's people are interested
is.
in it because I said they shouldn't. They wouldn't be. I'm telling you, it's everything. Everyone does the opposite of what I predict. Those are my predictions, sure to go wrong, but they have to be legit. Like I can't be like tricking the universe into, like, oh, I want this thing to do well, so I'm going to pretend that I think it's going to be a flop. No, it's genuine.
Then it's a lousy superpower because you can't manipulate it. You can't do anything with it. So, like, what good is the superpower? What good is it?
I'd rather rewind time. What can I say? Like everyone, there's got to be a cipher, right? There's got to be a Doug Ramsey who has a useless power, or gold.
You're the cipher.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Or gold balls. Although Robert Kirkman now has turned gold balls and his power into something useful that it's actually a cocoon that you can grow a human being in. So who knows? Maybe that's it. Maybe my powers will evolve somehow. And bottom line is we will somehow be able to cash in.
Next subject.
So Batman is now March 2022. The Flash was supposed to be June 2022. It'll now be November. Shazam 2 will now be 2023. And Black Adam is off the schedule altogether right now. So I look, it's here's the good thing about the human brain, right? When all this stuff started happening in March and April, it was a kind of a shock, and it was, part of it. And look, again, predictions sure to go wrong. I'm like, this will blow over in a couple months or whatever. We'll get back to normal. But now we've grown accustomed to it. That's what human beings do. We adapt and we grow accustomed to it. So my level of shock and or dismay is now just indifference. It is what it is, and we'll move on, and we'll keep watching streaming, which doesn't seem to stop. So. that's just what it is. All right. This was the big bombshell that came out last week. So people are still making announcements. That's kind of the cool part about all this, right? So we still have stuff to look forward to. Jaime Foxx, according to Hollywood Reporter, has revealed that he is set to reprise his role as Electro for Tom Holland's third cinematic solo outing as Spider-Man. Fox played the iconic Marvel villain in 2014's Amazing Spider-Man 2, which starred Andrew Garfield, and that was in 2014. Garfield was recast with Holland when Peter Parker joined the Marvel Universe. The plot is still being kept under wraps. Spider-Man 3 is expected to see the return of Zendaya, Marissa Tomei, all of his cohorts at the school. Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal are on board as producers. And but now we are getting an Electro when we've already kind of been teased a shocker, and we've been teased Vulture returning as well too. Here's my take on this, which I thought was interesting. Remember when we were on the brink of not having a Spider-Man 3 set in the Marvel Universe? And now, fast forward a year later, is this just like one of those coronavirus, changes of heart? We were on the brink of not having Spidey in the MCU, and now we've got Electro crossing over, like the original Electro that we had in those Sony films, now crossing over. Like, look at how far we've come.
It's a lot has happened this year. I don't know what you're talking about. Is that goodwill or something like that? Because I know.
They were at each other's
negotiated a deal, and they, the appropriate people were going to make the appropriate amounts of money, and then business as usual. Business continues. I guess
so, but I find it interesting, the fact that yes, money persuades things, but when there is negotiations and bad blood that supposedly had developed, I find it kind of amazing, the fact that look at now where we are a year later, and I guess there's no amount of money.
Aren't taking things personally,
I guess so. But that seems to be very anti-Hollywood. That is I guess my point in all this. It seems to be such a direct contrast to what typically
Hollywood
happens.
It's very Hollywood. As long as they make their money, as long as they make a deal and then they come up with the right amount of money.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hugh Jackman's talking about being Wolverine again.
Of course he is.
Yeah, but there was a big production out of him no longer being Wolverine.
Sure.
In Logan. So, but
right.
they threw the right amount of money at him.
No, I think it's vice
Nevers.
versa. Probably. I think he wants to be part of all the cool stuff now that the X-Men can be part of the MCU.
Why would he want to be part of the cool stuff?
I think there's just a general desire for that.
I
was at a small, socially distanced.
Do you
gathering.
think he wants to be part of the MCU?
Yeah.
Out of the goodness of his own heart. Just
no, I'm not saying he's
fun?
doing it for free. I'm saying yes, he will get paid money for it. But I don't think it's a cash grab. Is my point. I don't think his reasoning for it is.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think I ever said it was a cash grab. I said with the right amount of money involved, nothing is ever.
That's insinuating a cash grab. That's like when Phil Jackson.
No, it's not insinuating a cash grab.
So
if the right amount of money is involved, it's just like getting a job, right? You get a job. If they pay you enough money, you'll take that job. If the money is not right, you're not going to apply for that job. That's not a cash grab.
It's two separate things, right? If the money's not right, yes, you're not going to do it. But also you've got to want to do it, right? I mean, that's part of, and someone in Hugh Jackman's case has made so much money over his life. He doesn't need the extra money necessarily.
How do you know?
I know.
How do you know he's not?
I know his account.
He didn't buy a house and now is underwater because of this house that he's got to keep. You don't know
That's got to be some big house. Yes, there are always exterior factors we don't factor in. My opinion on it, though, is that he is doing it because he's talking about it because he would like to be part of it. I mean, I was at a gathering and talking to strangers about all this stuff, people I don't necessarily know, as close friends, and they're like, "Oh, I can't wait for the more like." And that's what I'm saying. I think that's the kind of goodwill.
I can't wait for the what?
I can't wait for the MCU to come back, and I can't wait for the Marvel movies to come back. And that's the general sentiment around the MCU. I think it's just it's like a fun place to be a part of. So if Hugh Jackman is talking about that, Jamie Foxx obviously wants to be a part of it too. I think that's become.
Yeah, I'm sure they're paying him.
I'm not saying.
I'm sure he wouldn't. I'm sure he wouldn't do it if they weren't paying him enough.
Of course, no. When you use terms like enough, it insinuates that it's. Well, I'm paying you enough so that you're going to endure this. No, they're going to pay him requisite for what is.
No, it doesn't insinuate that. If they don't pay him enough, then he's not going to do it. If they pay him enough, he's going to do it. It's not
I would sit there and wager. I would sit there and wager if. Now, mind you, Marvel prints money right now. The MCU prints money, so it's not a question
this year. No, they don't.
In general, they tend to print money, right? This year is an abnormality for everything, right? If let's say they approach somebody and said, "Hey, your standard quote's 20 million, but we need you. Our budget only has 10 million left over. Would you do it?" I think there's a number of actors that would just want to be part of this Marvel franchise that they would take. That? What's that?
Do you have proof of that?
I'm saying I think this. Do you have proof otherwise? I'll go that way.
I do have proof that actors get paid. That they do things for money.
You do know that actors do take pay cuts in exchange for other things or just to be part of certain things as well too.
Has there been a
Forrest Gump was funded completely by Tom Hanks actually.
Has there been a statement from Jamie Foxx or Hugh Jackman that they are willing to take a pay cut?
I don't have evidence to the contrary.
You don't have any evidence in the positive though. You can't prove
I don't have it in the negative either. So
you can't prove the negative. They were getting paid.
But do we know they're getting paid what their quote is? We don't know what the payment is for it. And my point being is that
I said again, here's no.
My point is
we're not doing this. I said basically that nothing ends. There's enough money in it, things will continue. There's nothing nefarious about it. There's nothing negative about it. There's no connotation of a sellout aspect to it.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Hugh Jackman very famously said he was done being Wolverine.
Yes.
Now he's going to be Wolverine again. Okay.
But you're saying the number one factor is the money.
I didn't say the number one factor is the money. I said
that's what you're implying.
I'm not implying anything.
Okay.
I said if there's enough money involved, nothing ends.
Okay.
And that is not the number one factor is money.
All right. We'll let folks comment on that. Let me ask you another question, just shifting gears back to the Jamie Foxx as Electro. Is this, in your mind, opening up the doors for the Miles Morales multiverse that we saw in Into the Spider-Verse? Because there was even one article that actually said, boy, the Sinister Six, they could bring the cartoon version of Doc Ock into this world and have her be the Doc Ock that's in there, and I'm like, how would you even do that? But
Kevin Feige already said that the future is the multiverse. So sure,
Yeah.
possible. But I don't know. We don't know anything about it. So I mean, maybe.
I know.
I mean, you already have Jameson in it.
Yes.
So,
That's an interesting casting too, though, right? Is to bring these people back from the original, but I'm imagining it's clean slate, right? It's casting the same actor without, there's no history, obviously, because I think Spider-Man Homecoming is the Spider-Man that we now accept, right? The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, none of that came before. Doc Ock, none of that came, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, none of that came before. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, none of that.
Now you're contradicting yourself. I mean, doesn't that open the door for the multiverse, in which case all of it came
Right,
before?
no, but in this timeline is my point. The J. Jonah Jameson casting is interesting because it's the same actor playing the same role without any of the
just
continuity.
Like the Jamie Foxx thing.
Yes.
So I mean, it's the same thing. Why?
I don't
understand why you're.
I'm saying it's not a well, no, Jamie Foxx though. Maybe that's a multiverse situation. Maybe that
Wouldn't
coming.
Jameson be a multiverse situation? Wouldn't that imply a multiverse situation?
It could, but it's interesting when you have him broadcast live across, New York City to announce that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, which is what happened at the end of Far From Home. Spoiler. Well, I mean, look, it's been out for 3 years now.
All right, make that decision.
It's interesting. That is to then imply that he has been part of this universe, as opposed to I just got brought over by a multiverse.
Yeah,
or
I mean, we don't know anything about. I don't
know we
get
don't
this.
know anything. We're speculating. This is what we're doing here.
Yeah, I know, and I keep asking you questions in the form of the speculation, and I'm asking you why you're coming to one conclusion for one thing, but not the same conclusion for the other. That's the question.
And I'm answering.
It's the exact same situation.
The J. Jonah Jameson now, is it possible? Because again, in my mind, and this is how my mind works, if we're creating a multiverse situation, right? Is it that the universes are merging, right? So that J. Jonah Jameson, maybe he is the same J. Jonah Jameson that we experienced in the Tobey Maguire, but in my mind, he's got to be different. This has got to be same actor, two different characters, and it just happens to be played by the same person. Because again, to establish yourself in the same job, it's not like you're crossing over into a time. Like, it's not like you all of a sudden, you live in this one universe. You're J. Jonah Jameson from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. You step through a portal and you end up in our universe, which is now the MCU universe, and are able to simply just step back into the same role that you exhibited because A, there'd be two of you. B, there'd be, differences in the timelines and differences in what ends up happening. So to me, he didn't cross over from another universe. This is a new J. Jonah Jameson played by the same actor. Jamie Foxx, however, because we haven't seen it yet, we don't know, really could be the Max Dillon from those earlier Spider-Man movies who crosses into our universe, much like they did Into the Spider-Verse. So it can be two separate instances or two separate conclusions from the same thing is my point. Obviously, we won't know until we get there. My gut says probably the latter. I think in Electro's case, this is not going to be Jamie Foxx reprising taking over a new version of the same character he played. Whereas I think the other way around for J. Jonah Jameson. I think that's a case of him just, the recasting the same actor to take on the character, but it's a brand new version of that character. Your thoughts?
I disagree.
So what do you disagree on?
I disagree that either of the situations are any different. We don't have information. We don't know if that Jameson is the same. Well, you asked me what my thought was, okay. Right?
Go ahead. But you're not speculating. Your thought on what's your speculation in terms of the character?
What's the distinction between speculation and what I was just about to tell you? I don't understand.
Okay, tell me what you were going to tell me, and I'll tell you what the distinction is.
I said we do not know whether or not that is the same Jameson or not.
Right.
We do not know what the situation is. We do not know if that's the Jameson of our universe or the Jameson of another universe that's come to this universe we just don't know.
Right.
It's the same exact situation as hearing that Jamie Foxx is going to be Electro again in another universe.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if that's just going to be the Jamie Foxx of our universe, of the MCU universe, who happens to become Electro, or if he's crossed over. There's no need to speculate. So, I mean, one scenario is just as good as the other.
But that's my point, though, right? I'm asking you to speculate. You're saying I don't want to speculate, and I'm asking you to speculate.
I'm not saying I don't want to speculate. It's just, I mean, okay, sure. I speculate that it's the Electro from the other universe.
Awesome. Was that hard? Was that so hard? What would you want? What would you want to see? Would you want to see the Electro from the other universe crossing over?
I think that would be interesting.
I feel like that would be more interesting than having him just having the same actors.
Well, yeah, it'd be redundant if he was if it was just another origin story of another Electro that happened to be the same guy. Yeah, that would be redundant.
I think that's what makes it interesting to me, is that this is and this is the difference with the J. Jonah Jameson, right? Like, I love the fact that they recast the same J. Jonah Jameson. I can't think of the actor's name for some reason off the top of my head.
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. I love that they recast him because he was great in that role. But I'm happy that it's in my mind, it's a new J. Jonah Jameson. I could be wrong, right? It could still be a multiverse situation. It could have been him crossing over, which would be a complete total surprise for me, which would be great. So I don't mind that as a plot twist necessarily. But I just like the fact they recast him because he's perfect, right? He's perfect in that role. Electro, to me, because the movie Amazing Spider-Man 2 was so kind of like meh, it's more interesting to me if he crosses over. It actually makes things more interesting rather than just having him kind of get a do-over for some reason. I almost feel like it will make it, that we don't have to sit through watching his origin all over again, because it really wasn't very good the last time, and there wasn't anything he brought to that character in the original film. Not because of him. He's a fantastic actor. Obviously, he's an Oscar-winning actor. I think the movie itself was just kind of so, blah. The more I'm talking out loud, the more I'm wondering if I just do want a brand new Electro because of how bad Amazing Spider-Man 2 was. But no, I don't know. I find the thought of crossing over and creating this multiverse, kind of fascinating. All right, tell us what you think. Feel free to speculate. It's okay to speculate. I want to know your speculations, because we're not going to know. And because of coronavirus, we're not going to know for like at least 3 years. So go and give us what you want in the Facebook feed. If you're listening to us on a podcast, you can always chime back in the Facebook feed. And we'll have some fun with this. All right, when we come back, the boys, we're reaching the penultimate. We're reaching the end. And we'll take a quick review of episodes 6 and 7 when we come back.
My name is Dylan Sharp. For most of my life, I've had the uncanny ability to manipulate time. More specifically, 24-hour intervals of time. When I choose to, I can literally undo anything in my past up to 24 hours the previous day. It's like a running timer in my brain. I hit rewind, and bam, I'm right back where I was the day before. Not 2 minutes, not 2 hours, but exactly 24 hours previous, complete with all the memories and experiences to boot. It's something that could really come in handy right now if I wasn't still groggy from the drugs. I don't know what they used to spike my drink, or how they knew it would block my powers, or how they even knew I had powers at all. What's worse is, I can't help thinking, if it wasn't for my damn mother, I wouldn't be in this situation to begin with.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast.
I disagree.
We are a Rogue Matter podcast, part of the Rogue Matter podcast network, and we're going to be announcing a whole bunch of cool new podcasts. We already have Button Smash, which you can check out, and you can find all this stuff on our YouTube page.
Because of social distancing, we can't do a Congo line. You know, like when we're announcing the new thing, like the how low can you go kind of thing. It's like, you know how you do when there's new things happening. It's a whole party full of people and they're doing all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, you can do it. It's just a lot different. I mean, you're basically
it's hard to do on Zoom.
You're
miming
really
hard.
It's
yes,
you're miming it.
And of course, you're going to always win because you're faking it.
Yes,
and you're lying to your friends. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
No, you're not really lying. You're just miming it.
It's kind of deceptive. Go ahead.
All right. So the boys, we didn't review episode 6 last week. We've kind of been. It's funny.
God.
We've been binge reviewing it. We've been grouping episodes together. So we're going to tackle 6 and 7.
What do you mean, we white man? You're the one who's been.
I don't see race or color, so I'm clearly offended by that. We're all human beings here.
That joke is older than both of us, by the way. What do you mean, we white man? Look that up. That's an old joke. Like, go ahead. It's an old joke. I think it's a Long Ranger joke, but all right, go ahead. Or
Zorro? No, not Zorro.
No.
No,
listen, don't dig deep because we're just gonna say the wrong stuff and then get roasted in the comments. So don't do that. No. But all right, so okay, I'm not really watching
as
them,
a
but
show,
you're enjoying them.
Yes, us as a show.
Yeah.
We've been doing it as a binge almost, which is kind of funny considering they're
you got this episodes. 2 episodes per review kind of thing going.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're up to the penultimate episode 7.
Okay.
So far this season, obviously, we've had things like Homelander's son, who is a natural born or supposedly natural born.
Was it Compound V? Right?
Correct. So he is supposedly a natural born superhero, as opposed to every other superhero, which was created by Compound V. We've had Stormfront, and they revealed her
suspicions against that, though.
Yes, I have my own little suspicions against that. I actually do, because they made it a point in episode 7. So Stormfront, basically, we've seen who she is. She's legitimately like a Nazi. You know, like there are a lot of shows out there that like to use like white supremacists and neo-Nazis, and in some cases like an allegorical way as well too. Maybe not allegorical, but Watchmen kind of comes to mind, where it's, they use, Rorschach then represents the white supremacists and things like that. Stormfront is an actual Nazi. She was born in 1910, and she was part of the Nazi Party.
Okay.
Like she's a legitimate Nazi. And so
kind of clears up another argument we had, but okay.
What was that?
Because I was like, I think she's a little, I think she's on the other side, and you were like, well, we don't know that yet. It's just carnage. and I was like, well, look at the people she killed. So I mean, I had no proof, and that was still that was back when I was watching the first 2 or 3 episodes. So, but I'm glad to see I was right. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, going back to the comic versus the show, I mean, we wanted to see where it would go, but that was what the original character was. Also, he was
okay. Fair enough.
It was a he.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a development.
Yeah. So the 2 of them drop by, and they basically kind of like steal the son away, who has gotten over the fact that his father pushed him off the roof, and now wants to kind of get out there, and so
Stormfront and Homelander stole Homelander's son
correct.
From the mother.
I would say not steal, yes, but they convinced him.
They spirited him away.
No, they kind of played mental games, which is what you do with kids, and got him to like fly away with them. So they took him. But it was of his own.
That's what spiriting someone away means.
In a way. So these are all like things that we've kind of gotten to the, we've had this developments happen. We've had this kind of thing happen. The reason I say I don't know if he is legitimately a natural born superhero, though, even though it's implied, and that's
Homelander's son you're talking about.
Right. And that's what it probably is. but this is the reason I say that I don't know or not is they made it a point. Stormfront makes it a point to be like, your son is the first natural like she spells it out to the point where like he's so important because that part of me kind of wonders, like, I don't know, we don't know what happened. Like she was supposedly dead, the mother, Rebecca was supposedly dead and she's not, and in the comics she is dead. So they could kind of open the door and do anything with this. Are they going to go this route? I don't know. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, interesting. They made it a point to spell this out. But overall, the season itself, though, I got to be honest, has been very inconsistent. And there's something about this show, although I love the ending to episode 7. I actually loved the ending to episode 7. It will make your head explode. Wink, wink, nod, nod. To watch it. But
okay. I assume actual heads are exploding in that episode, right?
Yes.
It's like the end of Kingsman, right?
Yes,
where everybody's
no, they're actual. Yes.
Oh boy.
And we don't know why.
Oh, how innovative! How wonderful for this show.
But
fantastic. That's striking.
It's. I don't know how to explain it. It's like watching Walking Dead and not knowing, who's going to die next, kind of thing. And in a way that trick works very well to create suspense and tension. But in this case, it's kind of gotten to the point of dread. Like I actually have dread about it versus like, I wonder what's going to happen next. To, oh God, I hope, like anytime Homelander's on screen, I'm like, this guy could literally just tear this person apart. And there's that sense of like foreboding evil that has accumulated over this season versus the first season where it was a little more fun, I guess is the best way to describe it. Versus this is where I'm kind of like, oh man, I hope.
Told you it's kind of like when you start at 10. There's nowhere to go to.
Yes.
There's no way to build to, right?
Correct.
So, I think my personal feelings, and I will not soapbox about it because I've made enough of a stink about the show. I think if it was like a slow burn where you weren't quite sure, where everything was ambiguous about the 7,
right, and
you started to get inklings towards the middle to the end of the first season, that wait a minute, I don't think the 7 are superheroes, I don't think these guys are on the up and up but they started literally from episode 1. Episode 1, Homelander destroys a military plane or something, right?
Yes.
He's obviously on secret missions for Vought, they're doing all kinds of nefarious things to the point where like, all right, so these guys are up to no good, like predominantly up to no good. So where does that go? And then you got the boys,
right?
And because they're always outmatched by the heroes, they're all 90% of what they're doing is always in the shadows in rooms talking about what they are going to do.
Yes,
but there's not a lot of interaction between them. So it turned out the first season turned into more of a Superman allegory with a mommy fetish. And it's effectively menacing in its own way.
Menacing's a good word for it.
The problem is Zack Snyder kind of beat them to it in making the boys real life, because Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, or especially in Batman versus Superman, kind of really flirts with an evil Superman.
Right.
He's not evil, but the fact that everybody's got their doubts about this guy,
right,
which is not the Superman legend,
right.
No one doubted Christopher Reeve. People were throwing kids off of waterfalls just to see if he would show up, right?
Yeah.
So, but Henry Cavill's Superman is a little like that guy. He'll probably save you.
You could realistically see Henry Cavill's Superman going the route of Homelander versus Christopher Reeve, which you would never in a million years. Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
With that. I agree.
So, okay, so you're in season 2 now, and you're saying I don't have confirmation of this because I haven't been one, but you're saying running out of road, right? It's running. running out of
It's not
steam
running
for
out
you.
of road. It's just the overall tone after a while. Like I'm still excited to see the
It's
show.
like
I'm still excited to see where it
relentless, though, right?
goes. But after a while, the tone, it's not a show for the most part this season that I've watched. And I watched the first 3 episodes straight through. I thought they were great. And again, it might just be a binging thing. It might just be you have to once you get geared up, you can kind of follow through and see all this stuff. But now I missed episode 4 when it first came out in time for the show. So I ended up watching 4 and 5 back to back. But it was something where, if I get started with an episode, it's mentally, I've got to get kind of geared up for it, because otherwise the tone is like you said, menacing to the point where I'm like, I got to be in the right frame of mind to watch this, or else it's not as enjoyable. Whereas in the first season, I was just like, wow, I got to see the next one. Oh, I got to see the next one. I got to see the next one. And again, it might just be the week to week versus binging format. And you made a great point last week, versus The Mandalorian, which knew it was going to be an episodic week to week show, gave you an episodic week to week episode. Whereas this is essentially a bingeable show, or binge made show, that is deciding to release itself week to week, which is a difference in writing, and there is something different about that. My excitement,
and they're almost done, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. My excitement for episode 8 now is heightened, because I know it's the last episode, and so the cliffhanger that we saw at the end of episode 7, that could be episodic in nature, right? Because I mean, primetime TV, regular TV used to do this, right? Where it's a season finale next week. So you have these expectations in your mind, right. Versus week to week. Every week is a cliffhanger. It can just wear on you after a while, and it can get you to kind of not be as into it. So much to the point where, as I was really looking into the comics, and I was browsing on Amazon, and I said, boy, I kind of do want to know. Now I'm kind of curious enough to know, well, I wonder what they did in the comics. But that same menacing tone, I previewed the first issue on Amazon of the omnibus, the volume 1 omnibus. And I'm like, I don't want to have to relive all these excruciating moments all over again. Like, it opens up with the same thing. Huey, loses his girlfriend. The arms are, sawed off by A-Train, who's white, by the way. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Happens.
And he's holding, and Huey looks nothing like the Huey they cast, by the way. Like, I mean, he looks like a crack addict in the
schlubby, right, or something like that. He's
very like puny, like really puny, and also just I don't know, something. I like the guy they cast in the show. So
I think the guy who plays Huey does a voice for Lower Decks for the Star Trek cartoon.
Oh, okay.
I think so, but I don't know. Don't quote me.
So again, all this stuff, I didn't even hit the buy button. Like I was like, I don't want to relive all this stuff. Like I don't want to relive the shock value. That's the thing. That's what happens with me. I get tired of stuff that is morally ambiguous. I get tired of it very quickly. When I realize that no one's going to make the right choice, no one's going to make the right decision. Everything's going to be based off of an emotional, motivation. And the dynamic of the show is that people make wrong decisions. Once I've got that kind of figured out, I'm not interested, because I know no one's going to rise to the occasion. Yeah. And what's interesting to me about shows, about movies or shows, is people being put into bad situations and finding a way to get out of the bad situation. It's the puzzle, right? There is a dynamic of storytelling, which is becoming more and more prevalent now, which is also what The Boys is capitalizing off of, where there is no puzzle. The gimmick is there's no puzzle. Everybody's just going to keep screwing up, and then somehow we're going to stumble towards the end of this thing, And once I figured out, okay, this is just about, it's like Seinfeld. All these guys are jerks. Once you figure out that all the Seinfeld's friends are jerks, and they're the authors of their own misery. Yeah. If you're into that, it works. But if you're not into that, it just starts to get annoying. Like that they messed themselves up. More so Curb Your Enthusiasm than Seinfeld. Yeah, no, see, Curb, because Jerry was always an optimist, and that's the thing. But he counteracted a lot of of that. Whereas in
He
Curb Your
did
Enthusiasm,
save
it's
them.
just you're
Yeah,
watching.
There's no one to save him. There's
No.
no one to save Larry there. It's
Exactly.
Just, yeah. So
Exactly.
after a while, if you're into that,
Yeah.
it works. But if you cannot stand watching someone shoot themselves in the foot every week, it doesn't work.
Right.
And that's kind of the situation for the boys. It doesn't mean that the writing is bad.
No.
The show in and of itself is bad. It's just that if that's not what you're into, if you're not into the dynamic where everybody is a jerk and everybody's making the wrong decisions, and people just want to, because it doesn't even explain really why the boys want to get rid of the 7. Because Huey lost his girlfriend. He wanted to make A-Train pay. He kind of got that at the end of season 1.
Right.
And you find out that Butcher's wife is alive.
Right.
So now, what are they still?
Well,
what's the crusade?
Butcher is still would still be upset with them for having stolen his wife. And
there's a difference between being upset and then being on a suicide mission to try to destroy.
Right.
He's got.
Well, and this season does deal with Butcher in a different way. So he's definitely not necessarily the same. He is not the forefront. He's not in the forefront of any of this. He's always. Now he does have this kind of, they look to him to kind of rescue them kind of mentality, which is interesting. But for the most part, he is operating a little bit outside of all of this, and he does have so there's some differences there. And look, the ending of episode 7 was enough to make me now get excited for 8, because I do want to know what's going to happen, and it brought back a plot point from the very beginning of the season, so there is a good symmetry to it. So and the fact that Homelander is literally standing around going like, what the heck is going on here, that got me to the point where I'm like, okay, because this guy is supposedly on top of everything, or at least thinks he's on top of everything. So for this to be happening, very, very interested. All right, let us know what you think.
Do you know
what's that?
That The Boys comes on Thursday nights after 9?
Oh, I didn't know that.
You don't actually have to wait till Friday.
Look at that.
Consistently come out. I've seen it like consistently drop on Thursdays, like a little around after 9, but you don't have to wait.
They couldn't do Tuesdays. Couldn't do Tuesdays, so they could roll it into our show. Those jerks. All right. Let us know what you think. Are you guys enjoying the season? Is it as good as the first season? Are you enjoying as much? Is that sense of dread? Are you going to buy the comic? Because I still might, but I'm getting it. It's tough. All right. When we come back, we've got Andrew Pepoy, veteran comic book inker. He's got his own Kickstarter going on right now, and we get to interview him, talk to him all about it, plus his chance encounter with a living legend in an elevator that he regrets, when we come back.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We are, pleasure to have as a guest today. Just a veteran in the comic book industry, Mr. Andrew Pepoy. How's it going?
Doing great.
Your rogue gallery of titles that you've worked on are extensive. I'll get into it in a minute. You have a Kickstarter going on right now. But actually, no. Let's get into the rogues gallery of titles first of all. I mean, you have inked or drawn The Simpsons, Fables, Batman, the X-Men, Iron Man, Star Wars. You've done work at Archie. I mean, the list of books and experiences you've gotten to work on, I'm very, very jealous. Very, very jealous. Right off.
I've been very, very fortunate. I was a kid basically when I was able to break into the business, and I've been able to do this now this makes 31 years.
Yeah.
Professional, and I've just been extremely lucky to get to work on so many of those projects, and sometimes for a long time. I mean, you mentioned The Simpsons. I was on that for 18 years. Wow. Or Fables for 10, or Sonic the Hedgehog for 15 years.
Yeah.
So I've just been extremely lucky to get to work on so many great projects, get to work with so many other great creators, people I grew up reading like Kurt Swan or Jose Delbo, got to ink them, or just, some of the very popular modern guys. And it's just been a great time.
Well, we're going to touch on how you got into the business, and I want to touch on a whole bunch of stuff in your career. But first, I wanted to point out you have a Kickstarter going on right now. It's called The Adventures of Simone and Ajax: Lemmings and Tigers and Bears. Oh my! Tell the audience a little bit about what it's about, and then also talk to us about the process of kickstarting.
Okay, well, Simone and Ajax are my own characters. I created them 30 years ago, actually, while I was still in school. And so this is their 30th anniversary since their first appearance. And I sort of felt like, the world needed some more fun right now. So now seemed the perfect time to bring back Simone and Ajax.
What's that?
Which is, yeah, I mean, fun. Yeah, fun, jokes, silliness. But yeah, so they, this was the last time they appeared 10 years ago in a book that IDW put out, The Adventures of Simone and Ajax. And it is the adventures of a 20-something girl and her best pal, not pet, her best pal, a small green talking dinosaur. And they go on adventures anytime, any place I feel like sending them. So say in this book, there's a pirate adventure, because who doesn't like pirates? An Old West adventure. They go to Transylvania, meet up with, vampires, werewolves, and the Frankenstein monster. And people in the past have liked the Ajax private eye stories because, of course, being a small little dinosaur like that, he really is a tough guy looking character, isn't he? So people always seem to like Ajax being the little tough guy detective. And so I'm rounding out the book with that. And yeah, it's going to be a 128-page book with over 100 pages of brand new comics. The rest of it will be filled out with some rarities, things people probably haven't seen. Sometimes my Christmas cards I did with them, or pinups I did for other projects. Mm-hmm. And the Kickstarter is going pretty well, but we're on our 5th stretch goal right now. We just met that.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah. And I'd love to hit the 6th stretch goal, because the 6th stretch goal is going to be a PDF for the backers of the Simone and Ajax newspaper strip proposal that I had done many years ago, that the first 2 stories in the book, the pirate and Western stories, are based on, because I tried to sell them as a newspaper strip, because I used to do the Little Orphan Annie newspaper strip. So I love that format. And, and I'd love to have an excuse to announce the $30,000 stretch goal. I do have something planned, something special for the book.
It's funny you mentioned that too. So coming out of college, what was your goal in comics? You mentioned cartoon strips and newspaper strips, and honestly, I think today's generation obviously doesn't even know what that is in a way. Right. But what was your like number one goal? Like, if I can do this when I come out of college, I feel great.
Well, I mean, what I had wanted to do in the middle of college was I came back from a semester in Rome, doing school over there for a semester, and wanted to do the great American graphic novel in those European graphic novel formats that weren't really as popular here at the time. And
that sounds like an art student. That's definitely an art student.
And was showing my stuff around. I remember at the, and I mean, to backtrack a little bit, I mean, I've been doing fanzines since 1981. I published my first fanzine when I was 12 in 1981, and have been publishing fanzines throughout the 80s. And are you still there, Mike? You froze.
I'm here. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd already been building a network of connections. And so I'd already been talking to, say, Caliber Press for several years. I mean, I started getting my first nibbles because I started sending in portfolio lines when I was 14 years old. Yeah. And I started getting my first nibbles when I was 16. But then, got a driver's license and started, getting dates. So comics got a little sidetracked for a few years there. But I, like I said, I've been talking to Caliber and other publishers. So yeah, like even while I was in school, I sold a couple of pieces to Caliber in 1989. Wow. That was my first professional sale. And like I said, I came back from this semester, early 1990, wanting to do these great graphic novels, and was showing my stuff around at a convention. And someone said, looks like you'd be a good inker. It was one Innovation, if you remember them. And they were like, looks like you'd be a good inker. You want to try inking? I was like, sure, I'll give that a shot. And later that same day, I ran into a friend of mine who I used to do these fanzines with up in small town Michigan. And he was now penciling for Malibu, and he's like, yeah, we need an inker for my next miniseries. You want to try out? So, 2 people same day saying, you want to try being an inker. And so I was like, sure. And that was back in the day when you could just fly out to San Diego and walk into the convention, easily buy a ticket, no problem like that. It was in a hotel ballroom at the time. And so, I flew out there and, and didn't get the job at Innovation, but I got the job at Malibu inking my friends. So I hadn't planned, it's not like I really had a plan of what I wanted to do. I mean, I sort of had an idea I wanted to do these graphic novels, but it's like all of a sudden I'm an inker.
Right.
And in less than a year, I managed to go to New York and on my spring break of my senior year, went to New York and got my first, was lucky enough to walk out of DC with the Flash annual to do. So
what did your parents think too? Because this is a day and age. I remember when I told my parents I wanted to get into comics, and my mom's like, well, as long as you have health insurance. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm 22. Like, what do I care about health insurance? But, it's not necessarily something that I remember, like Jim Lee, like their parents were actually like upset that he was going to try to do comics because they wanted him to be in the medical field. And that's how he actually, learned anatomy, was drawing medical drawings and things like that. Were your parents supportive? Like, I mean,
they were very supportive. They were actually very supportive in many ways. They also still were very cautious and said, have a backup plan, things like that. But no, they'd always been supportive. I mean, like those fanzines I talked about, my dad would take me into his office building on weekends and nights, and we'd run them off on the office copier.
Nice.
Probably one of the biggest boosts and help that I ever had was, my mom would drive me from where we lived, Holland, Michigan, to Grand Rapids once a week when I was 12 in the summer to take us a summer comics art class with Mike Gustovich teaching. And I mean, I can't imagine how much more trouble it would have been to learn how to do comics if it hadn't just been for those 2 summer classes I took with Mike Gustovich.
Sure.
That taught me so many basics that so many kids never had a chance to learn. So I think that, so they were always very supportive of this, and they're very supportive on this Kickstarter too. They were really helping, they've been helping me out in several ways to make sure that this could happen, because they know this is my dream. I had a couple close calls in recent years, which made me really want to focus on making sure that I made some of the comics that I wanted to make. I mean, I've loved doing some of the other things. I've loved working on Fables and Simpsons and things, but I wanted to make sure I got to do, my kind of comics. And so my parents have helped, been making sure that they've been very supportive of this even now. So like I said, you asked about the parents. I've got some great parents.
That's great, though.
And before I forget, because I have forgotten this in the past when talking to people, I want to make sure to let people know how to find the Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, no, we'll definitely we're gonna give you that. We're gonna give you that.
Okay,
no, don't worry. We give you the whole plug section. But
okay.
Talking about the Kickstarter though for a second, this is your first Kickstarter.
It is my first Kickstarter. Yes.
And tell the audience how much prep went into this for you. And also how much work it's been to actually get it across this finish line, which is coming up next week.
I mean, it was months and months of preparation. In some ways longer than that, but certainly intensely in the last few months. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have some very experienced Kickstarter people giving me advice and helping me out with info on this. I mean, I'm very much basing the way I'm running my Kickstarter on the way Dan Parent and Fernando Ruiz did their Die Kitty Die Kickstarters. They've done 4 very successful Kickstarters for their Die Kitty Die project.
Okay.
And I've been inspired by that. And both Dan and Fernando have been willing to answer questions. As well, Brian Polito, who has, really done phenomenally on Kickstarter. I mean, certainly has taken a fair amount of time. He talked with me on, I've known Brian for, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And we've chatted on the phone. He's answered, questions on email. He's really been helpful. Trevor Mueller, Jimmy Palmiotti. So
Brian and Jimmy are like one of the two. It's funny you mentioned Palmiotti too, because they're the ones that actually kind of embraced Kickstarter, I think, because we were talking, off air a little bit, and I was mentioning about the Time Trader Kickstarter and how I had kickstarted that the first issue many, many years ago before it got picked up by Rogue Matter, and when we're kickstarting the second issue now. But I remember I launched it, Kickstarter is maybe a year or two old, and I don't think people kind of got Kickstarter, but I feel like with Brian and with Jimmy kind of embracing it, that's when people started kind of recognizing it for a place to find new books, right?
Right. Yeah. It's because you can take a book that, maybe some publisher, can't see the niche for, and you can find that niche, you can go out there and really get out to, the huge internet audience.
Yeah.
Not not just what they think they can sell in the comic shops. You can find everybody.
Yeah.
And so and they've done a great, you've seen the success those guys have had.
Yeah.
And so I've been really lucky to have really knowledgeable people, giving me advice along the way. But it has been a huge learning curve. I've never had to get printer quotes and stuff like that before. And at the same time, I was rebuilding both my websites to make sure they were brand new, because they hadn't been overhauled since 2005.
Yep.
It was a huge amount of work. It's like people told me it was a full-time job, and it has been.
Yeah.
And even while working on it, I had hoped I'd get some more drawing done while I was working on it. But there've been days where I've just been on my computer from 9:30. I remember one day last week, 9:30 in the morning till past midnight, just typing away, trying to get the news out there one way or another, messaging people, coming up with posts, having it's like, one good problem to have is I've been having to build extra graphics for the stretch goals that quicker than I thought I needed them. So it's like that's a good problem to have. And so I've that's certainly been taking up time, but I'm working hard to make this work, because I'd love to, there's nothing I'd rather work on than Simone and Ajax. And so I'm hoping that this is a new way of me, doing some other kinds of comics. And I have other ideas too. At this point, I'm already planning out several more,
That's great.
Plan out several more Kickstarters. I have another character that I already have an investor for, that I'm hoping to do a Kickstarter for in the spring. And then next
Kickstarter,
fall,
that's what, yeah. I still have people that come up to me and they ask me and they say, do I get a piece of do I own a piece of this? Do I, or the other thing is, why do you really need I guess you really need the money, and they don't. And that was my initial impression of Kickstarter when I first heard about it. I'm like, I don't want to ask my friends and family for money. Like, that's kind of, it's weird, right? But what it really is a distribution channel, right? That's something that it's now become. What's the one piece of advice that you've gotten that has been the most valuable to you during this Kickstarter so far?
So, there's been so many good pieces of advice. Certainly one is, because I've heard so many horror stories, so I haven't run into a problem yet, but certainly one piece of advice I've taken to heart is make sure you know exactly what your postage costs are going to be. In advance. That is
a very, very practical and necessary piece of advice. So that's fantastic. So we were talking, off air. You and Hassan actually crisscrossed at Valiant Comics back in the early 90s. And you touched upon it too, in terms of, getting out there and kind of being, right in the industry at such an amazing time. Take us back to what I knew you from the Valiant days. That's how I recognized your name immediately. And Fables obviously too, but later on. What was the early 90s like? You said you were, you're in Jim Shooter's office talking about the Valiant style when you were working there. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in the early 90s, it was, everything was expanding. So there, fortunately for me, there was a need for new people and new talent. I was still in school.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. I landed the Flash Annual while I was still in college.
Yeah, you said.
And so I was lucky enough to just go straight into comics. So yeah, a lot of it had to do with networking, and I still tell people that, even though the industry has changed because of the internet, but you still have to do networking. So yeah, I'd already been laying out a network in the 80s when I was doing fanzines, and that was what helped me get appointments at Marvel when I was trying to get in there, or at Michael Davis was a huge help to me to get in at DC, and got me some appointments there. So I was just out there, making the rounds of the conventions, because you couldn't just email everybody. You had to try to meet people in person if at all possible, because so many times if you just sent the stuff in, it just ended up in a pile and never got looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So I was out there hustling conventions, Chicago, San Diego, wherever else I could go, and talking to people. And it was, like I said, fortunately, it was a time of expansion and needing talent, because I look at what I was doing in 1991, and I can't imagine anyone hiring me today based on those samples. But you mentioned Valiant. I'm again, so many years. I'm thinking it was Paul Curtis, who was working at Marvel as he was Carol Kalish's assistant at the time.
Yeah,
he's also Maggie Thompson's brother. And I think he's the one who helped me set up something over at Valiant, because he had said, yeah, you should go talk to Shooter. And so, yeah, I went over there and, went in, talked to Shooter. We ended up actually having a really good conversation, about the Valiant style, but about lots of other stuff in comics in general.
Yeah.
In fact, for 3 hours, we were in his office for 3 hours.
Wow.
He ordered in lunch for us, I remember, just talking comics. And then he sent me out into the, bullpen area to go talk to Bob Layton to see about doing the Valiant style. They had me, while I was there in the office, actually, ink like part of an unused Ernie Colon Magnus robot fighter cover.
Wow.
Just to sort of see if I was getting the hang of it and stuff. So.
Oh
yeah.
man. And lastly, you talked about your missed opportunity with Steve Ditko at the Marvel office.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like I was saying when we were chatting earlier, I've been so lucky to meet some of the greats of the business over the years. I got to chat with Jack Kirby for a little while. Kurt, dinner with Kurt Swan a couple times. But the big missed opportunity was Steve Ditko. So back in, I'm thinking this was probably early '92. I remember it was winter, and I used to, I live in Chicago, so I would make the rounds of the publishers in New York 2-3 times a year, because like I said, back then you had to meet with people in person.
Yep.
And I went up to the Marvel offices, and you always had to sign in at the guest book at the front desk. So I'm going in to sign in, and right above my name, Steve Ditko. And I'm like, holy cow, it's Steve Ditko. He never signs anything. Where's an X-Acto knife? But I did not cut his signature out of the guest book.
I like that you admit that you thought about it though.
I did think about it. Yeah. And so I had someone point him out to me when I got in the office, just so I could say I saw Steve Ditko. And he had been in Mariano Nicieza's office talking about something. So as soon as Ditko left, I went in there and I was like, I don't know what he's doing for you, but I want to ink it. And it turns out it was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which, seems an odd choice for Steve Ditko, but hey, I
think Steve Ditko.
I still would have loved to have done it, but I did not get that job. But later in the day, when I was, because I must have been up at Marvel for about maybe 5 hours or so.
Sure.
And, so I'm leaving, and, it's mid-afternoon, and I go to get on the elevator, and there's Steve Ditko already on the elevator.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't know where in the building he was for all these hours, because I was on the Marvel floor, so he was obviously on some floor elsewhere in the building. And and I get on there, but it's like, people had told me he doesn't like to be bothered. We'd all heard the Steve Ditko stories, and so I was I was like 22 years old. I'm still like a kid basically, and
Sure.
I was too scared to say anything to him. I mean, and so I didn't. But to this day, I still regret that, because I've since learned, had I just said to him, Mr. Ditko, thank you for all the wonderful work, he would have been fine with that. At least I could have thanked him for all the wonderful work. Because like I said, I love when I can run into, some of the older guys in the business, some of the living legend, and just say to them, thank you, just so I can, tell them I really appreciate what they did, So, because it's like, it was, so yeah, I missed the chance with Ditko, though I did get to ink him years later on something that never got published.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Well, there's a silver lining when all is said and done.
I mean, unfortunately, we only did 3 pages of it before they decided not to go further with it. But at least I got to ink a few pages of Steve Ditko.
That's pretty amazing. All right, now is your chance. Tell everyone where they can find the Kickstarter and how they can be a part of the Simone and Ajax Lemmings and Tigers and Bears. Oh my.
Okay, so yes, it is running on Kickstarter until 12 noon Eastern time on Wednesday the 14th. So you still have about a week to check it out, everybody. So please do. It is the easy. You can easily go to my website, pepoy.com, pepoy.com, or the Simone and Ajax website, Simone and Ajax. That's Simone with an E and spelled out. So SimoneandAjax.com, and click on the Kickstarter link to go to it. Or, you can just easily, I've got a bit.ly link that'll take you directly to the Kickstarter page. It's just bit.ly/Simone and Ajax. And there's all sorts of reward levels. You can just pledge for the digital book. You can pledge for the regular book. You can get it signed. You can get a little doodle in it. There's a commission level. There's other art reward levels. Like, I've never sold Simone and Ajax art in the 30 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah.
So I decided on this one to offer the 4 digital issues. Oh yeah, that's something I forgot to mention, because because you don't want to, you pledge for Kickstarter and you're thinking, oh, it's not going to be here till like April, because that's my expected. I'm figuring everybody's going to get this in April, and you're waiting and waiting. One of the big things I picked up from Dan and Fernando on Die Kitty Die is they have been breaking it down into like 4 digital issues along the way, so that people get something every month or 2.
That's great.
While they're waiting, so that they know this actually is going to exist. Because we've all had Kickstarters where we've waited months or years or something and wondered, is this ever actually going to happen?
Yeah.
I want people to be able to get some fun out of it along the way. So hopefully about a month after the Kickstarter ends, they'll get the first digital issue. The second, both the first and second are pretty much done and ready to go. And I'm working on the third and fourth, so they'll be able to get those along the way. But since I had to do digital issues, I had to do new covers for those. So I decided, people seem to like to buy my original covers, like my Archie stuff and my Red Sonja covers and all. So I for the first time ever, I'm offering Simone and Ajax artwork for sale for the covers. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's all sorts of reward levels from $10 for digital all the way up to hundreds of dollars for originals. You could have lunch with me if you're willing to come to Wicker Park in Chicago. So yeah, I'm hoping people will check it out. It's like if you're looking for something deep and meaningful, this is probably not it. But if you're looking for something fun, silly, and just like one of my favorite quotes I ever got on it was the look of an Archie comic, but the sensibilities of a Marx Brothers movie. And I really love that. That came from a reader. But it's if you're it's been compared to Bone, Cerebus, Karl Barks' Uncle Scrooge, and Donald Duck stuff. If you're a fan of those kinds of fun adventure comics, I'm hoping to take a look. And if you want to get a better idea how it's going to look, if you go to the Simone and Ajax website, there's a preview section where you can read the first 6 pages of each of the first 2 stories, so you can get a little bit better idea.
Awesome.
And I do want to make sure I mention that if you're thinking, oh, it's been around for 30 years, how am I ever going to get into this? I try to make sure every story is an entry level story. Maybe there's some reference to an old thing here or there, but you're not going to miss something. So, within the first couple pages, you'll get the hang of who these characters are and what it's all about. So you could just pick any story in the book, read that one on its own, and you're fine. You don't have, there's no real, not a whole lot of continuity you have to worry about on this.
Well, that's
hoping,
a stark change from modern day comics where they don't give you any info. They just drop you right in. So
right. I just want people to be able to hop in anytime, any place, and just have fun reading a silly story with some great jokes.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, total pleasure on our end to have you. I've been reading your work and seeing your work for many, many years. So it's amazing. This is the fun part that we get in our podcast is we get to talk to folks like you as well too. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for helping get the word out there.
All right. When we come back, we will go spinning the racks. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Again, I want to thank Andrew Pepoy for dropping by. Go check out his Kickstarter, Simone and Ajax. You can go find it. It's funny because he when we were talking prior to having him on the show, he's like, yeah, it's going okay, the Kickstarter. And I looked and he's like 400% funded. But that doesn't mean that, you don't want to go and he's got more stretch goals and it's good stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, like good? It's doing good? Like,
wait, define okay. What is your definition of okay?
Yeah. A couple other Kickstarters too to check out. Victor Dandridge, The Trouble with Love. He is also like 400% funded, but in a different goal bracket. But it's fantastic. And go check out his Kickstarter. He's a friend of the show as well. And Einar Peterson, A Beautiful Implant. He's actually creating some sort of device so that blind people can read comics. So go check out his Kickstarter. It's a noble endeavor, and should be pretty awesome. All right, we are big fanboys of comics and graphic novels, and every week we like to bring you the inside info on what's going on in that world. And a lot of the stuff is what it will end up transpiring on the small and big screen. We call this segment "Spinning the Racks."
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
Sales charts. because I know you love sales charts. Combined charts for August are now available. So there's a site out there.
The other day, I was saying, if only we could talk about sales charts.
Yeah,
more,
I know.
You know,
I know.
I mean, we just do not have enough fun on
I
the
know.
show. But go ahead.
But I actually like this kind of stuff, right?
I know.
This is interesting.
You're,
So
you're an inside baseball kind of guy.
I am. I am an inside baseball. You're right.
You dig that stuff.
Wow, for a non-sports guy, you nailed it.
Don't tell anybody I don't like sports. Don't. Do
There's a site called Comicron that actually will give you the sales charts and tell you what comics are selling, what comics aren't. Now, it's actually run by John Jackson Miller, who wrote Iron Man at some point. I remember this specifically because he was breaking free of being a guy who wrote about comics and talked about comics to actually writing comics, which was to me was one of those, like, I didn't know you could do that kind of moments.
One of those rare crossover moments.
Yeah. So Diamond released their August sales. That's what kind of makes this interesting. They released their August sales, and Marvel took all the top spots. Like 1 through 10 was all Marvel, and it was led by Venom 27, which is the top selling Marvel book right now. And then Thor number 6 and Maestro number 1, which I don't even know what that is, but I'm sure one of our audience
so bad.
Will.
We're terrible.
Well, I mean, it's from Marvel, but I don't know. I mean, I could barely tell you what's going on right now.
What's your name? Can you tell me your name?
Big, but I mean, look, there was also that 3-month span where nothing came out. So I think a lot of things.
What if the House of X thing came and just kind of went, right? House of X.
No, that was a big.
House of X, Powers of X showed up, was a really big deal.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And they haven't rebooted it. They've kept the continuity,
it's
right?
Very consistent, and it's now. I think that's what's going to be 2021's big thing is now. Are the mutants a threat to the rest of the Marvel universe kind of thing? So, interesting stuff. But it had all the Marvel sales charts because that's all Diamond was shipping at this point. They weren't shipping DC stuff. So then now,
because DC went independent.
Correct. John Jackson Miller took the Diamond sales and got all of the sales for the 3 independent labels that DC spreads across, and DC is now the number 1. They take spots 1 through 5. Batman 3 Jokers, Batman 96, Batman 97, Death Metal number 3, and Detective Comics 1025. So 2 things off this. A, DC is doing really well since breaking off a Diamond. Diamond just doesn't want you to know that. And 2, people really like Batman.
Yeah,
it's like
Batman. I could have told you too from the start. I could have told you. Even I love Batman, and I was never a DC guy. Not really into DC comics when I was growing up.
Yeah,
because it had to be binary, right? Everything. Yeah. So you could, if you were a Marvel fan, you could not read DC books. It was really stupid.
Yeah.
And funny thing is, my uncle was a giant DC fan, so we used to fight about that all the time.
Batman is the one DC character and the one DC universe character. So I talk about like Robin or Nightwing or something like that I actually liked. Superman I could never get into. I liked Superman, but I didn't, I would never like really pick up a book unless it was like Grant Morrison was on Superman at one point. So I was like, I'll pick that up. Or, the Jim Lee All-Star Superman was supposed to be great. And so I checked out an issue, when Talon Caldwell and Mike Turner were doing Superman. I was like, I'll check it. I want to see really good art with Superman. So I'll check it out. But for the most part, it would have to be some sort of like gimmick to get me to read a Superman comic. Batman is one I could be like, I remember seeing Norm Brayfogel's Detective Comics in like a stationery store. It was like Detective 528 or something like that, and I'm like, I want to
freak you out, right?
Yeah, I'm like, I want to read this. So I could see that. It's just very interesting the fact that that's a top selling. The other thing that's so interesting to me is Venom 27 is the top selling Marvel book. Venom, like, where have we gone? Like,
I don't know.
So. I mean, full disclosure, Venom was a huge successful villain in the 90s. And they did break him off into his own book, but eventually it always fizzled out because so now I'm intrigued.
There's not much you can do with Venom.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So now I'm intrigued. What's Donny Cates doing with Venom that is making that book be the number 1 selling Marvel book? So now I'm interested. And Thor number 6 is the number 2 selling Marvel book. I mean, that's,
Yeah, we're gonna have to grab those then.
I know.
We have to grab those to find out. We have to figure that out.
Sales charts, my man. Sales charts. Look what it did.
Yeah, I'm not gonna admit to it. Even if you're right, I'm not gonna admit you're right.
I like that. I like that. I'll take that. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Go check out Andrew's Kickstarter. Go check out my Kickstarter, and technically our Kickstarter because it's a Rogue Matter Kickstarter, Time Trader. Next week, we are launching the Rogue Matter website. We are not personally doing it, but Rogue Matter is. And so we're going to preview some of the stuff that you can get on there. I'll give you one little tidbit. Everything up there to consume, comics, short stories, novels, podcasts, it's all free. Don't tell anybody. It's all free. Actually, tell everybody. We'll talk more about it next week. Plus, we'll review The Boys season finale and anything else. I'm sure someone will announce. I'm Alfred Molina will come back, or maybe we'll get.
Wait, we had Alfred Molina on our show.
Oh no, not on the show. No, maybe he'll come back to the Spider-Man universe.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm like, wait, when was he a guest on Rogue Matter? It's one of my off weeks.
We'll see you next week.
Rogue Wave.